Now we all know that Jujutsu Kaisen is one of the most well animated series and it is animated by some of the most talented people in the industry, and I'm going to attempt to reanimate it only 7 days.
What did he say?
So when I was choosing a sequence from Jujutsu Kaisen to reanimate, I immediately, without properly thinking about it, chose the Maki vs Zenin clan fight. This was stupid for 3 reasons. 1. There are way too many characters to animate. 2. I did not have any experience animating anything like this. 3. The backgrounds are very hard to create, especially for someone like me who doesn't even have any experience creating backgrounds. Okay, so 4 reasons. I had to composite it. Again, I did not have any experience compositing anything. And I did not think of any of this while I was sitting down to animate because I'm clinically very stupid. The animation and coloring have to be done in 7 days, the backgrounds and compositing have to be done in 7 days, and AI mocap are not allowed. Now I initially wanted to do this challenge in 3D, but after trying to figure out the texturing, I found out that I would finish in the year 2035. And my second option was to recreate it in 2D. This would not only stop me from pulling my hair out from trying to recreate the hand-drawn look in 3D, but also creating the dynamic poses would not be as hard as creating it in 3D. But the problem is I don't know how to draw, because I'm a 3D animator, and not a very good one at that. So I decided to mix them both, where I would create the animations in 3D and trace over the 3D animations to create that hand-drawn look. With this method, the 3D animation was pretty easy to create because they don't have to be that polished to look good in 2D. So I grabbed a bunch of 3D models from DeviantArt and SketchUp and started animating. So I wanted to spend 1 hour on the 3D animation and spend the rest of the time I had on 2D. Now remember when I said I wanted to spend 1 hour on the 3D animation and spend the rest of the time I had on 2D? Yeah, that shit went to the fucking garbage on the first day. Because the first 3D animation took me 8 fucking hours to create and cost me so much fucking time, especially this fucking pose. So after throwing my head against a brick wall for 8 hours, I finally finished the 3D animation. Now the huge advantage with 3D is that it's very easy to experiment with different poses because it doesn't take that long to change the poses as compared to 2D, where each pose has to be drawn by hand. But it is very hard to create these types of poses in 3D because 3D is too perfect and anime has a bunch of human imperfection, which is what makes anime look so good. And my workflow was not very well structured, and you're going to find out about that in the next. Now the second day was when I actually started to create the actual animation, and it was not that hard. This is the easiest part of the process, where you just turn your brain off and just trace over the 3D animation. I had a little trouble with drawing the clothes of these characters, but I used references, so it was not that hard. And while I was explaining the rules, I forgot to explain a couple of rules, like the animation should be over 5 seconds and that I can get the character models from online because I'm bad at character modeling and modeling in general, and I did not want to add more pain to my painful challenge. For the 3D animation, I just animated his body moving and rendered it out, and I had a very hard time animating the facial animation of this character, so I decided to finish the animation later. And for the third shot, I cut a lot of things, especially these shots from the episode with a bunch of feet moving, because they would have taken me a lot of time to animate. Now the fourth shot is this wind up or anticipation animation where Maki does this maneuver, and this animation was the animation which took me 8 hours to create on the first day. Now if you're going to use this method to animate, my advice is to make the movements look snappy and use the in-betweens that your 3D software creates, because this would give you way more options when you're tracing. Now I did not animate these scenes from the show because they would have taken me a shit ton of time to animate, so I cut them out to finish the sequence in time, because even though tracing over the 3D animation is easy, it is still very tedious and still takes a lot of time. 12 hours worth of time to be more precise. This animation was very hard to create because of the running animation, because I don't know how to create a run cycle. So after spending 2 hours, I finally created the run cycle or running animation. Now what blue screened me for a while was the fact that whenever I switched from constant to spline, the animation played in slow motion, forgetting the fact that my dumbass duplicated a single frame of animation and forgot to delete it. And I also baked the animation, and because of this, majority of the animation were the same frame and I ran out of time to fix it. So this animation was not that hard to create, all I had to do was scale a bunch of stuff. So after 3 days of non-stop work, I decided to take a break, which was a really bad idea because the next few shots were really tedious to create, one of which I had already created, but I had to cut that because I did not have the time to trace over it. So I created my own animation where Maki would immediately turn around and cut this character's throat or slit his throat, and the next animation was Maki's upside down flip cut animation, which I had a really hard time figuring out because she was upside down and I could not figure out the movement for a really long time. So I finished these 2 animations in one day, and all I had to do was color it. So I got the color pick tool I picked the colors from the anime and colored it, and also finished the coloring in one day. And I finally finished the animation I did not finish previously, like adding the in-betweens and stuff. Now for the backgrounds, I used the same method where I would pose the characters in 3D and trace over the image, but this process is extremely time consuming because I had to constantly go back to Blender and fix the poses, or just had to change all of it, which is also what I did for the animations but forgot to mention it. And I only had one day to create the backgrounds and another day to composite it. So I spent the entire day creating the backgrounds and I couldn't finish it. I wasn't able to pull it off. So I decided to cut the compositing process and spent another day creating the backgrounds, and I finished the backgrounds. Now the main problem on why I couldn't finish it on time is because I wasn't constantly looking at the reference, and I did not storyboard it or experiment with different poses and camera angles before animating, which is why my workflow was not efficient, and a lot of problems I had would have been resolved by pre-production, which I did not do, and also other things like creating the dynamic poses, which is pretty tricky to create, and me constantly going back to Blender to fix things is another reason. And the animation was the easy part because it did not need to be super detailed and I did not have to use the graph editor, which was really surprising. And the steps that I used for animating is first created the key poses and added the in-betweens for those key poses, and I changed the timings for the body parts, which is also called offsetting. And doing this stuff was not that hard, it was just extremely tedious. The most important thing for the animation is to make it look like it's been done on twos, and an easy way to achieve that is to do it on constant to make sure the animation flows better, and then change the timing of the characters different body parts, and then switch to spline or bezier, and then the animation will look more natural. Well, there are other things like scaling and distorting the model to create the dynamic poses, but to nail the general movement, this is all I had to do. And then for the tracing, I did not trace over every single frame, only very specific frames that I thought flowed well together, and by doing this I achieved that hand-drawn look. And then for the coloring, I picked the colors from the anime and then just colored it, and if I had composited it, I would have had that anime look. And I learned a lot from this project, the main one being to not be a dumbass and to properly plan stuff out before doing it, and to focus on one thing and to polish that one thing for the time you have. It doesn't matter if you're going to create a 1 second animation, make that 1 second animation look good, well, based on your deadline, and don't focus on anything above those 1 seconds unless you have a team. And I also had to understand anime shapes, like for the elbows they look very sharp and they're very sharp. I can't think of another word for it, so I'll call it sharp. And also the hair is very simplified, and also it is very important to understand foreshortening, especially for the dynamic poses. Okay, did you get all of that? Because that was very hard to explain. And also while I was looking through my files to delete some things, I accidentally deleted the background image for the first shot and did not go back to recreate it because I had run out of time and I was on the verge of collapsing and having the John Cena moment. And I also accidentally deleted the backgrounds for the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th shot. I decided to finish the project and don't add anything else to it. So here's the finished sequence that I spent an entire week on. Now, did I reanimate Jujutsu Kaisen in 1 week? Hell no. Look at this. Now, I did learn a lot from this project, even though it was a miserable experience, and this video took me way too long to make. It took me a really long time to edit it. So, well, thanks for watching my video. Subscribe and like.